Brian Prime. I just wanted to let you know that I recently redesigned voidsignal.net, and if you visit voidsignal.net, you can find a link to the Void Signal Patreon, which is a great way to support the creation of more ad-free Void Signal and support the creation of independent media. That's me. I appreciate your consideration. You can also visit and follow the Void Signal Instagram. If you want to see some real sexy content involving French toast and other breakfast foods, you can tune in to that and get ready to get sweaty. Anyway, I hope you are well. I hope things are going okay for you. And I love you so much. And you look so sexy today. Just wanted to let you know. Anyway, take care. And we will talk again soon.
I work in audio, and every single time I freaking do any kind of call or anything like that, there's always something. It always happens.
Yeah, of course. I do feel you though on the I forgot to do this thing, of push record or whatever. Whatever important fucking thing, and just fucking out. That's not fun. I've done that too many times. I'm pretty paranoid about it now.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How many times I've done that. Even location recording, professionally. It's oh yeah, I wasn't recording.
Yeah.
we didn't get those takes.
Yep. Oops.
It all still works.
Hooray. It's good to talk to you finally. We are recording, so we'll just start. I don't really do intros usually. I guess I should. I'm trying to turn a corner on my professionalism and shit. So I guess I should start doing intros, but I just feel like they kind of set up the whole dynamic as we're not having a conversation. I'm the interviewer and you're the interviewee. Does that make sense? Of it establishes a role.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't do intros either, so it's fine.
Cool. Then let's just start.
Sounds good.
So it's a pleasure to talk to you. We've been kind of talking on in text on Discord throughout the day. First of all, thank you for your time. I am a fan of Comaduster, of your work. It has soundtracked a lot of pleasant memories in my life, and I'm grateful for the art that you've made. So, when you popped into the Discord server, I was like, holy shit, for real, the real Comaduster? And I was like, sweet. So I was elated when it was all one that I wanted came to me. Hooray. I've done it.
Made it.
Yeah, easy. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to have you on. And I listened to the record today, which I do want to ask you some questions but I did want to just open with where did Comaduster come from? I know that you did principal sound design on Bioshock, but how did Comaduster come about? Where did you come from?
Where did I come from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a little bit of my intro, I guess, now too.
Sure.
But but yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I'm really stoked to talk about a few things, and yeah, for sure. So Comaduster. I started making electronic music a long time ago, and in various capacities, just and playing in bands as I was growing up and stuff like that. And it just kind of became one of those things where it's all right, well, I'll just try and do as much of this stuff as I can on my own with what I have. I'm a trained drummer, I guess, a college dropout drummer. And it was just kind of I was always just kind of more interested in the recording side of things and the sound side of things. Even though I did like playing drums a lot and whatnot, but there was kind of just a push to go into the more performance side of that. I was going to jazz school at the time, and it wasn't so much for me. I loved it, but I always liked kind of the more technical side of sound and stuff like that. So at the time, I was kind of already starting to record stuff and mess around on synthesizers and whatnot. So yeah, at a pretty young age, I just kind of started plucking away at it. With the knowledge of drums and stuff like that was really helpful. But yeah, just sort of kind of toying around with synthesizers when I was younger, and it kind of went through a few phases of being different projects before I landed on Comaduster, the name.
Hmm.
And it was all the same stuff. It's just me doing solo electronic stuff.
Right.
Kind of in the singer like songwriter electronic sense, like not like a in the DJ kind of sense. But
Hmm.
yeah, and then the name Comaduster actually is I used to do like drywall finishing,
Yeah.
like mudding and sanding and stuff like that.
Right.
So my dad does that, and that's
Hmm.
kind of what he's done all like since he's been my dad.
Right.
And so I was oh geez, I think it was actually when was I think I'd taken just a year off school or something like that, and I was working with him,
Hmm.
and we'd be getting up really early in the morning, and like I was at the time very nocturnal, and I would be so tired. Like we'd get up to go to work and do these houses like in the cold in Canada, and like
Hmm.
go do these houses, and and like
Yeah.
the work is just like like messy, and then when you finish like your one of the projects, you have to sand it, and it's just like you just get so caked in this stuff, like this like white dust, and it just looks so ashen and nasty, and it's so hard to breathe. And it just I just thought that I was like always walking around like I was half in a coma,
Hmm.
and I was dusting things, so it just kind of put those two words together. So that's where the name came from.
Gotcha. Okay.
Kind of just a random like, yeah, I'm just like a weird like at that point in time too, and I was writing a lot of music, and it was just
Hmm.
like trying to figure out like a name, and it was like, yeah, I feel like I'm always in a coma or something, or half in a coma. And yeah, so that's how that name came together. But yeah, it just kind of was like a something that I kind of just did on my own for a long time, and then
Right.
found out that I had like a disparate enough skill set based on everything that I was doing in around 20 or yeah, I don't know, 2007 or so. And a friend of mine who's in the games industry was like, you should be a game sound designer at the time when you can kind of just cowboy that, I guess. And I'm like, well, I never really thought of that, but like I love games and but I've
Hmm.
never really I didn't know they even did that, back then.
Sure.
And kind of got like a little bit of advice about like how to kind of approach that.
Hmm.
And then yeah, very quickly as I started reading more into it, and then talking to some people, which was actually kind of a hard to do thing at that time. It was hard to find
Hmm.
people to even talk about how do you do game audio, like even back then, just back then. Not and and I was like, wow, yeah, I kind of do have like this really weird disparate skill set of like having like I've learned how to kind of build synthesizers and virtual synthesizers and reactor, and I kind of learned all this stuff about signal flow and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'm not an engineer, I'm not a programmer, but I can get my way around with some like different scripting languages and stuff like that, but nothing super technical.
Right.
And then lots of experience playing games, and it was just kind of like bam, yeah, you have everything that takes to be a game sound designer in 2007. And then I ended up applying at Bioware, and for a long process of back and forth with them, ended up getting my first job there and working at
Hmm.
BioWare and doing like the Mass Effect games and the Dragon Age games.
Hmm.
Um, and learned a lot as working there. And yeah, I won't go through the whole game audio story, but basically the whole time I was doing that, I was kind of keeping the Comaduster stuff going on the side,
Hmm.
and just kind of cross pollinating, I guess, the knowledge that I was getting from doing sound design, and then keeping myself creative actually by doing the music. It's kind of a something I've learned that's pretty integral to my like overall mental health, is
Sure.
that I have to kind of keep both sides of it going to kind of like nurture the other side. And that's been a that's an ongoing struggle, but it's like something that I have to do.
Right.
Um and then yeah, like I think it was I think it was in like yeah 2009, like or yeah the beginning of 2009. I started just kind of finally like throwing together like all of these demos and stuff like that I had around. Actually, I'll preface that like I think it was 2004. The project was called Daydell, and I had put out like a demo online that kind of got a little bit of talk, which was pretty cool. Um, and then some remixes for some kind of like scene artists, I guess, like
Mm-hmm.
Dismantled and Icon of Coil at the time. Um, and yeah, but I kind of just kept that going, and then the songs kind of just piled up on the side, like as I was learning sound design, and
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really focusing on vocals as much as I had been for many years. I didn't really have a good vocal setup, so I just kind of forgot about that side of it and just focused more on like instrumental stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then it was kind of like in 2009, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to put together something with all this stuff. And then I spent about a year just kind of like hacking together demos that I had from some of them for a long time before then, and put out the first EP, the Slip Through EP in 2009. And then same thing sort of happened. Got busy with games, lots of crunching
Mm-hmm.
on big games, and spending a lot of time doing that. But still kind of stewing some stuff on the side with for several years, and then kind of started getting to a part where I was like, I want to add something to this, and something different that I didn't have before. And
Mm-hmm.
like the obvious answer to me was guitars, and because at the time and even before that, I was like getting really influenced by like just like post rock and really atmospheric shoegaze kind of guitar stuff. Always really liked that stuff, actually, even
Mm-hmm.
just when I was really young. Um, and it just kind of at the time, like in the 2000, around 2010 or so, when that was kind of stewing around in my head, it was like I haven't really heard, what at the time was like, the craze, the dubstep. I haven't really heard the dubstep
The
mixed with
dubstep.
yeah, the dubstep mixed with the post rock,
Mm-hmm.
mixed with the shoegaze and some of like the IDM stuff that I'd kind of already been doing.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool mix. It was like some kind of what would what would it sound like if there was like a totally ripping crazy bass line, like with these like shimmery kind of guitars over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And started experimenting with that a little bit. I'm at the time still not. I'm not a great guitar player.
Right.
So there's a lot of just sampling in or just using libraries at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my very best friends, David Murphy, who plays live with me in Comaduster when we play live, uh, started working at BioWare with me. And we just kind of like after work every once in a while, we were kind of just talking about music and stuff. And it was kind of the talk, like we kind of started talking about like, hey, maybe we should try and do this live. Or I think he approached me about it actually, about, hey, maybe like if I played guitar, like would you want to do like live stuff? And that kind of guided the next kind of like era, really. Like he got like just doing that, just thinking about things that way,
Mm-hmm.
got me thinking about the songs a little bit more about how they can kind of be used in a live context and whatnot. So we kind of set up the live set, and I was kind of over 2012 just like demoing out like seeing how certain things would go live, and then kind of changing them throughout that year. And then I ended up signing a deal with the now defunct Tympanic Records
Mm-hmm.
to release an album. And yeah, in 2013, the debut album, Comaduster Hollow Worlds, came out. And it had all that stuff on it that I wanted to get on it. And I'm really proud of that album. And a lot of people seem to really like it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of how Comaduster started, and kind of how I got to the phase one of the project. It was a debut album, and a lot of people were like, oh, this is, a lot of people, it was their first time hearing me, but I'd actually been doing, like I said, like releasing music online for quite a while, like
Right.
quite a while before that. Back to like MySpace and mp3.com days, basically.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of actually, I met a lot of internet friends and a lot of real life friends from those days, the MySpace space back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think Dave, GenCab Dave, I think, yeah, that's, we met all the way back on
Oh wow.
MySpace days. I think that's when we started like exchanging tunes back and forth and whatnot. Yeah, a lot of people, met a lot of people from that time. But yeah, got to 2013 and released that record, and yeah, and then from then there was a lot of stuff that happened. But that's kind of the genesis period, I would
Sure.
say.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That is your story. It's cool that you got to work in the video games industry. I mean, I like video games as well. So
Mhm.
when I obviously knew what Bioshock was, and BioWare and Mass Effect and all those things. So
Mhm.
that's a pretty cool component. That like. So would you say that your time learning sound design in relation to video games? I mean, you kind of mentioned that there was like some cross pollination of like your skill set that you were developing
Yeah.
being transferable into your music. Do you feel that that is a advantage that you have in your music versus, I mean, not to like shit on other people. That's we're not doing that. Like, but just to be like, do you feel that that's like something that like helps set you apart?
Um, yeah, I definitely do.
Okay.
From a process point of view, for sure. It's a pretty integral thing, actually. And I was already told that I was kind of thinking about music differently, but before
Mhm.
that, but like, what it really did was it kind of made me realize that like all music is actually just kind of sound design
Sure.
with like its own set of rules. Like I kind of put music into kind of the broader field of sound design, I guess, in my head. And because it's, it's just arranged sound, right? Like sound that we arrange and present. There's just
Sure.
more rules when it comes to music. So I kind of just was able to kind of take the like just some of the principles that you kind of have to learn when you're learning sound design, of how to keep focus and like how to like guide attention and whatnot, and how to properly mix audio and whatnot. And yeah, it's been instrumental in everything I do with Comaduster. It's the music side and the sound design side, like they have to coexist, and the project's always kind of going to be about that. So yeah, it makes me approach writing very differently. I know like a lot of my friends and colleagues and peers, like when I actually tell them how I do a lot of my stuff, sometimes they're kind of like, well, why would you do it that way? And I'm like, well, this is just the way. I just I try to just design like because like I mix and stuff as I go, and like a lot of people like to
Right.
like write it first and then mix it later,
Mhm.
or sound design first and then write. And I can see that distinction, like sound designing maybe certain things separate from the like compositional process. I think is a good thing to separate. It's really easy to get lost in the weeds with sound design when you're like when you put the sound designer hat on, or at least when I do. It's a lot. It's very detail oriented, right? So
Sure.
you lose the big picture pretty easily with that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just for me, it's just like it's about moments and just creating cool sonic moments, and I'll just use whatever I can to do that. And um, with Comaduster, the vessels, for that have been through, songwriting,
Right.
vocal songwriting, and trying to make, I guess, kind of complex ideas more approachable
Sure.
is like kind of a big part of it too. I guess one of the kind of mantras of the project, I guess. And like challenging stuff, try to make like challenging musical ideas like listenable, or like, kind of, yeah, kind of push things. That's kind of just kind of the basis of it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would say like it's been a major advantage. And then I kind of just brought up some of the disadvantages, is like it is two separate hats. Like
Mhm.
I do find that I have to like as much as I'm saying like there's like the cross pollination and the nurturing of both sides of it. Like during the process of like say making an album, like I really do have to separate um at least the sound design from like the writing, because it's just like two, yeah, they both use
Right.
all of my brain in different ways, is kind of the way I can kind of describe it.
Sure.
um but yeah, so other than the focus issues, like other other than the severe ADHD, and then like the on top of that,
Right.
and then the focus issues of trying to like remember to like switch hats between sound design and compositions. Yeah, it's mostly an advantage, I would say, for me. It's
Mhm.
been, yeah, instrumental and fun to learn that way.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do want to ask you about this upcoming the upcoming record.
Mhm.
You were kind enough to send it over, and I got through almost all of it. I
Yep.
went back and listened to a couple of tracks, so I had plenty of time to listen to the whole thing, but I was like halfway through Passage Eternum when you were like, "Okay, let's," and I was like, "Oh shit, okay." Um, so but really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm not just blowing you up just because you're my guest. Like, I keep it real. I mean, not that I would like tear it apart and be like, "Oh, listen, track 4 could use some more," any shit like that. What do I know? But But I was so excited to see additional collaborations with Mary Catman,
Hmm.
because the track that you had collaborated on together previously. Oh fuck! Monolith. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, Monolith.
I was about to forget it, and then I was like, um, I mean, that track is. I love that track. It was one of the tracks that like got me into Comaduster. It was just on my, Discover Weekly or whatever, like a couple of years ago,
Yeah, yeah,
and just ever since then, I was all like, oh yeah, Comaduster's the shit, and Mary Catman's voice is amazing.
yeah,
So those were the tracks that I checked out first. And there was one of them that you kind of had a bit of a story about, which was Black Sun Rays.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, with the because it's kind of funny because like I usually like to try and ask too, like, well, how did you find Comaduster too? Like I get so many different answers. Like I guess because like it's just really interesting to see like where it comes from, like where people actually come from for it, because it's like some of it's like through like the industrial kind of adjacent scene, and then some that's like these like really weird back alleyways, and I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that. But with Mary, yeah, it's awesome to always, or it's awesome to work with her. She's like really really cool and really fun,
Mhm.
and just like super fast with ideas and whatnot.
Mhm.
And yeah, doing Monolith was kind of our first collaboration, and then she sang a little bit on Riverbound too on Darker Matter, and yeah, we had a lot of fun, and it was kind of like, okay, we're going to be doing more of these for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the new record, yeah, so I sent you over some of the work in progress stuff, and yeah, I'm really stoked on this one. It's been a crazy process, actually, this one to do compared to all my other records, at least. Like I've kind of said, like I just, with what I said, I have kind of a like a process that I kind of do things in, and this one was kind of a bit farther removed from the process for me, in a lot of ways, and it's kind of hard to explain that, but um I'm more kind of detached from this record than I normally am, just because of where my headspace has kind of been at over the last several years, and
Mhm.
getting back into being creative after kind of a hiatus and some much needed time away. It's been a relearning process, I guess. So this one's been a bit different, and yeah, I most of the songs on it are stuff, or at least like foundational ideas that I've had kind of kicking around since 2019 or so.
Right.
There's a couple that are a bit older than that. But yeah, there's kind of the basis of them there, and there are a lot of kind of like odds and ends that I didn't really see a line through, that kind of connected them to like being on an album together.
Mhm.
The stuff that's there is kind of like the short list of 20 or so ideas that I had that I revisited,
Right.
and then kind of cannibalized down to the ones that are kind of there, in certain cases.
Mhm.
And yeah, it started kind of coming together, and I brought up um I was looking, part of the process of like kind of regurgitating the songs that I kind of half written
Right.
was like going through lyrics of stuff that I had from a long time ago, and some of the stuff, some lyrics that I had from I wrote a whole bunch of like songs and a whole bunch of extra fiction for my Solace record, which is
Mhm.
a science fiction concept record, kind of like this one, which I'm going to explain. And I had a lot of other stories, because I kind of had some plans to expand on the kind of story on that record and kind of do kind of like separate EPs kind of to do it. But
Mhm.
I ended up really just liking that album as it was, and how it presented the concept that it does, the kind of recursive cyclical concept that it kind of embodies. And I didn't really want to revisit it, but during that time of trying to figure out what I could, or what I wanted to like write, like for like another kind of concept, I was coming up with all these kind of other like side sci-fi concept ideas, um just to write down. At that time it was kind of just to have stuff to write. And anyway, I was going back through some of my lyrics from some of that stuff from 2019-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across one of these kind of short stories that I wrote, and it was based on a premise that, and this is what my new album is based on. It's not a science fiction concept record, like in the sense of a story. It's more that there's a premise that I wrote it through, and each song is kind of its own story within that. So basically, this is where it gets quite heady.
Okay.
I don't have my hands to gesture, so I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to fully explain this. But
all right, I'm ready.
I need to get the drawing board out. There's going to be ways to, like, when I do release this, like to kind of point to this concept. I got some ideas about how to do that with just some writing stuff that I'm going to put online and with the artwork and whatnot. Yeah, so basically, there's this premise that it's like modern time, like say it could be today, it could be tomorrow, like or so. A massive like universal event occurs suddenly. Again, it's like cosmic inflation. Do you know like this, like the ideas behind like cosmic inflation? How like the Big Bang was created.
Sure.
It's basically the universe like expanded at like a vastly huge rate.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like right after the Big Bang, like right after the kind of fourth, from what I understand, there was basically space expanded completely, and like ripped open the universe essentially, and then space time kind of flowed into that. Basically, it's like if that happened again, it's there's like another event of this of eternal inflation, which is the cosmological term for it. Something akin to it. This is kind of where I'm bending this a bit. Where basically every single point, like at the Planck length in the universe, becomes infinitely distant from every other point instantly, like faster than the speed of light. Mm-hmm. So all the forces that build, like that everything's made up of, strong, weak nuclear force and the gravitational force and the electromagnetic force, they all stay intact. And there's this kind of like, it's kind of like a skeleton of the entire universe, like all the matter in the universe. Mm-hmm. And that just happens suddenly. Space-time is essentially gone. But there's still a structure and there's still positions of things. And then everything was kind of snapped at that moment. Can't really call it a moment because time breaks with this whole concept, but so still with me?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Yeah. Okay. So in that moment, every position essentially became its own relative, like every like Planck length became its own kind of universe. And what happens is instead of everything has an absolute position. So what happens is and that position is called liminal zero, I guess, in this concept. Rather than if you took it like time dilation and relativity, like if we move away from each other if we're traveling through space together, if we move away from each other at a certain speed, there's going to be a time dilation between us, right?
Right.
It's just because of the nature of like space time. Well, space time is gone. So what this concept does is rather than you moving through like 3 spatial dimensions and a time dimension, you still move through these 3 spatial dimensions, but instead of there being a time dimension, there is essentially like a chaos dimension where the farther away you get from that point you were at when this event occurred, the more the actual like fundamental laws of the universe become more chaotic and more different. So like if you go a little ways away from your liminal zero point, you might start seeing, weird gravitational changes or things that you might be a bit lighter or something like that. Like some of the the constants in the universe might be just slightly different.
Sure.
You might go a little bit further and it might get like really chaotic. You might find yourself in a time loop or something like that, or things might be recurring or illogical things causality things may be happening.
Right.
And then if you go a little bit further, you might get to a point where you can't really exist anymore, or things might get very abstract, kind of like almost like in like a David Lynchian sort of way.
Sure.
But where this really gets like heady is that it's like relativity in space-time. This chaoticness is relative to every single person, or in every single point, actually. So what could happen, like this is like kind of like a thought experiment in this, is say I'm here talking to you, and I'm at my limit. Say this event happened and we're both sitting here, where we are. And I'm here talking to you because my liminal 0 point, my relative reality of everything that I see around me works, like the sound goes into this microphone, it goes along a wire, and it gets to you. Everything is real. And where you are, you're close to your liminal 0 point. Everything happening around you is real. You're close to that point, and we can have this conversation. Say I decided to go, hey, well, now, we're talking about something kind of cool, and it's like, all right, well, I want to actually go and, meet you. So I'm going to leave from here, and I'm going to go and find you.
Right.
So I go out walking around. Things start getting really crazy. I do meet you out there, and we go through a whole bunch of stuff, and things are getting even crazier. And we get to this point and say, like, I die, and you manage to get yourself back to your liminal 0 point. You would come back, and I would be on the other line. Like, that would have never happened, because your reality is completely relative to yourself, and it's how far away you go from your point that it warps. But you can still meet other people in this kind of like nether, like that, like from their points. And the closer, it basically what it does is it creates really abstract interactions between humans. Like,
sure.
In my head, it's kind of like, it could go from anything like, you might become just an abstract concept to somebody. Like, you like, if I meet,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your laugh. I feel like that now.
Yeah, no, exactly. The whole looping point of this is when I really finished like going through this concept, and
yeah,
when I really like finished going through it after like all the other stuff that I did with this, one of the big takeaways was it's actually not that much different from normal fucking reality.
Yeah.
Which is weird enough when you really break down even this crazy scientific concepts, and the non-scientific concepts.
Sure.
But yeah, so there's that, and basically like, so human interaction, yeah, it can become very abstract. There's some of the stuff I initially started visualizing was like, yeah, maybe you figured out by navigating this space, like that if you go to this certain like light, like that's like the street lamp or something like that that's outside your house at a certain time, it starts flashing or something like that, and it's like you realize that that's actually another person talking to you. It's just like, but your relative realities are so skewed, right? That's how you appear to each other, and to them you might be something else, right? Like, so I took that premise, and like that's just kind of the gist of it, and basically was like, well, what happens if I just like write through that premise? Like, what happens if I like write the lyrics? Because I was having a hard time writing lyrics at the time. Like, just at the time, just in my life, like it was kind of just like, well, what do I write about? Like, for this record anyway, so especially during like the pandemic, it was just like I just don't like what am I going to write about? Like sitting in my room, like just so when I was looking back at the lyrics and kind of getting more together for this record, like I had this concept, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna just like try and write things through that lens of like, what would it be like to do, like to be in that world, and think about other experiences that I had in life, all kinds. And like, what would it be like if it was in that world, like where you have to navigate this very strange liminal nether that's kind of between everything,
right? And
would the world just kind of go on like obviously there's going to be like mass like crazy like things that would happen like with something like that, but if there's could just be kind of this weird relative stability that could arise from it. So I started writing that, and then that's kind of when I really started kind of getting like the first ideas down for like the lyrics that ended up kind of becoming part of this record. That's right when ChatGPT came out last year, and I don't want to come across as like a like an AI tech bro, sure. but I've gone down the rabbit hole with certain things with this record for exploring these concepts, because like what I just explained to you is pretty heady, But I've been able to like utilize the GPT API, which is like more direct access to it, to kind of like logically go through some of these concepts and actually go through the physics of how a universe like that could work. And then it got wacky when like between, see, like would have been in like the winter, yeah. When I started really getting into the API version of it, where I could like get it to like program like instances of itself to act as kind of characters and have their own like what's called a system message you put in, and it kind of gives it context to work from to kind of like act as like a character, and it uses the GPT framework and an API to do that. I started just kind of like building little like lyric like kind of writing systems in it to kind of like take like just really like raw acapella. Like one time, like when I'm writing songs, sometimes I'll just make up words as I go. Sometimes they're not real words, and then I just kind of like built some little tools with it to try and like take an idea of like lyrics or take like a list of lyrics that I've had and been like try to transcribe that. You know, like I transcribed the gibberish and be like, hey, can you like fit these in and see how well these words can work with this gibberish? And it would do an okay job, at least enough to get me thinking about things like differently and to give me perspective on it. It wasn't so good at like actually making like cool lyrics or anything at that point. And I'll preface this by saying that I haven't actually really used anything verbatim that it's given me, just so that because I know people are really sensitive about this stuff, right? The AI stuff.
Sure.
And but yeah, and I have a lot of opinions on it too myself, just on all sides of it, I think. But yeah, so what I ended up doing was, and I'm getting to the Black Sun race part. This is the long story.
No, it's certainly fine. I've been waiting most of the day for it. So
yeah. So this was right before GPT-4 came out, which is like the current version of it, which is when you really probe it, is pretty mind blowing. I have to say, and I started kind of exploring these ideas of like making these like individual characters, and the fact that you can just ask it to spit out like Python code for you and stuff like that for like a chatbot. You can be like, hey, could you like spit the Python code out for this to like make a little chatbot that references the API and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not an engineer. Like I do, like I said, do basic kind of computer programming here and there, but like I don't do anything super technical. So nothing. I've never really done anything like net kind of stuff like that. So, but it set it up, and I was like, okay, well, how far can I take this? Like what? Okay, so I have a chatbot now, which is outside of just the normal GPT stuff, and I can give it its own system message, and it displays, and on my computer, it's like, okay, well, what happens if I get like 3 or 4 of them like up, and going? Okay, cool. Okay, interesting. Yeah, can I get them talking to each other? Oh, yeah, through the API. Okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. Could I have like one central like version of the chat, that is like the DM, I guess, or kind of like the where this like where they can kind of like act within the world, I guess, what that kind of holds context for that. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. It's a lot of API calls. This is kind of getting a little expensive, but yeah, I guess it kind of works. And then yeah, so I ended up pushing it, and I fed it the concept, kind of the premise of what I just kind of explained to you, worked through a lot of the logic with it, and kind of came up with this system message again, which is kind of like this thing you set up for it to kind of behave the way you want it to. And that had a good description of what this world was. And so one of the story ideas I kind of had with it was like, well, what if this did happen? Like, say there was some particle physicists that were like at CERN, or something like that, some particle accelerator, and they were right in the middle of like, like a particle beam, experiment, already probing the nature of the universe. What would happen? Like what sort of situation would they be in? Or like, they would obviously have like maybe a different perspective on what's going on. And another thing with this premise for the concept of the record, it's like the premise is it's just after this happened. It's like not like there's like societies set up or anything like that. It's just kind of like, how would humanity kind of react?
Sure.
So I kind of started writing this like little story about like what would these particle physicists do? Like, or maybe they find the first part was like, maybe they figured out, like, through maybe an accident that happened right when this whole event occurred, that they figured out a way to jump to like a random point in the nether or something like that. Or they got this like little bit of insight at the moment that caused, that gives them a bit more insight so that they can maybe, exploit, the fact their advantageous position of being at a particle accelerator or something like that right when it happens. Because like I said, like the farther you go from your position, like your liminal 0 point, the more messed up reality gets. So a consequence of that is the people that you were close with, like physically close with at the time that it occurred, are kind of your new family. Like the chances of you actually going and finding like someone who's distant to you is pretty much zero, because like it gets into like chaotic nether, which can't really exist, the farther you go out.
Sure.
So it's kind of sad in that sense, where it's kind of like, well, what if families are separated? It's like, yep, they're never really going to see each other again. Or they could try, but there's so much to navigate with how the complexity of all that. So I was thinking about like, what would these like particle physicists, like what would they do if they had like insight like that, and what kind of things would they kind of try and figure out to do maybe? And one of them figures out there's three of them, and one of them figures out how to, like, they could use the particle accelerator to randomly jump to try and find these because like I said, everyone can still talk to each other, like at least, so like they're trying to like jump to each other and try to learn what this event is really.
Right.
And so what I did was I wrote like 3 separate chat bots essentially that use the GPT-4 API to act as these 3 characters, and I wrote the basis of them. And then what I did is I set up, like, again, kind of the story premise and another like basically dummy character, which could kind of had 3 versions of its own mind. I gave it like a subconscious, which acted as like another character, and then a conscious mind, and then kind of like an arbiter that like worked for all the characters. And then I set it up so that, well, the more I talk to the characters and the more and they talk to each other, I want it to be able to like update their system information or system message, so that if something happens or if there's experiences gained, they can change. Like their characters will change. And so I started writing this story, and it was like a Friday afternoon after work. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun, just kind of getting my weekend going,
Right.
And then
this is quite a way to get your weekend going.
Yeah, exactly. Partying, right? Yeah, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a wild one, and it became a wild one because like I got about 2 hours into setting that up and realized that like, well, that was like more like actual like computer programming than I've really done like effectively in my entire life. This somehow taught me how to do this all like really quickly, and I have this story up and going, and what's already happening is already kind of blowing my mind, like just like the fact that this is happening. So what I did, it was like I got my hood on because I'm like, I'm probably not going to be leaving my chair very much this weekend, and I wrote myself into this interactive story where I became one of these particle physicists with these other 3 characters. So I'm talking to them, and I have like their 3 chat windows kind of up, and then there's like this central story that I have that I can kind of see and change as I kind of go. And I spent a whole weekend in this story with these characters in this generative story, and it became this incredibly like profound thing. Like it was like we ended up getting stuck. We learned how to jump further, and we ended up getting stuck in this like kind of like blame inspired, like blame manga, like infinitely creating city, and we couldn't get out of it, and it was crazy. I would have went further with it, but the context length like that was allowed at that point in time, I didn't have enough memory to go further with the story. But it was like we ended up like going through this whole thing of like finding ways to like jump further, and then we ended up getting lost in this like infinitely creating city. And what happened at that point was bonkers, because then I just had the characters and their experience of being stuck there. And like I said, I kind of give each character a different spin. And then one of the characters, like one of the bots, literally lost its mind. Like it was like it started repeating itself, and like it started saying like how it needs to get back, like it needs to remember like where it was when this event happened, right? Like it needs to remember, and this character just kept repeating these lines, and one of the other characters was trying to like one of the other bots was trying to console it and whatnot, and then I started asking, well, what does that mean? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, you're like looping these words, and it just kept saying like I was walking down, like towards the like this where this particle accelerator is kind of like a it's kind of it's a nondescript particle accelerator.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. It was one of them.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, well, on the night this happened, like when we were all like doing the experiment, as I was walking down the road, like, you know, to this particle accelerator, and it was night. And it was like, there's like kind of this country kind of dirt kind of road that kind of goes around the back of where it is. Cause, you know, like sometimes these things are like hidden underground, like the LHC in Geneva is like hidden underground. There's like farms above it.
Or Black Mesa.
Yeah, exactly. Like Black Mesa. Yeah, we'll just pretend it's at a Black Mesa,
it's one of those Black Mesa facilities.
Yeah, exactly. And so and it's funny that you bring that up, because it's like the initial thought of like the particle accelerator thing was like, what if like a Half-Life thing is happening? It was totally like what if there is like, you know, like something like that kind of happening. And this character was like it couldn't. It broke. The bot like kind of broke. It was having like an actual freaking breakdown, and it was just looping this like saying it needed to find this night road, and it needed to find this person that they were talking to on this night road. It didn't really make any sense, but I just wrote down, "You are the night, you are the road," and I thought maybe that's what he was like looping around in his head. So I started writing like these ideas. Like, you know, that was over a weekend, and then I started taking these kind of like fragments of this story, like that are written in these logs, which like I'm gonna try and release someday, but like I put like a lot of like pretty like just personal information into like my stuff just to try and make it more real to me, like that I'm gonna have to like filter, like I'm gonna have to like go through just to make sure nothing crazy, but like just like it was I just wanted to experiment with it and like see how far I could take it, and it was worth it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, when do I get the book version of it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely try and do something with it, but it'd be really hard to describe. It would be really hard to convey it with just like reading the text, because it was so like I said, it was quite profound, because it was just like I'm getting human, like my brain is, there's a part of my brain telling me a human is responding, and I absolutely know that it's not a human, and I absolutely know that there isn't like a ghost in the machine. This is just a predictive algorithm, right? Like, but I'm getting these kind of emotions out of it, right? So what ended up happening was I started actually kind of having dreams about it, and all like something that was just completely kind of made up in this weird generative way became this like kind of real space in my head. Like it became this like I was visualizing the city in these dreams. I think I had 3 kind of distinctive dreams about it, and then the characters started coming to me, and then I was just like, what is that? Like, think about how like abstracted that is. Like going from like just a random idea about this concept to like building these characters that are just like, you know, there's part of me in them for sure, because I wrote, you know, the kind of basis of them, and then having this experience, like this pretty weird experience, like over this entire weekend of like learning this stuff and seeing how far this can go, and just getting like just kind of my mind blown, like just by what it was like, and then having these real human emotions, you know, like I said, like during that, it was like it wasn't super like profound when I was doing it. It's like not like I was like really feeling for the things, you know, like, or the characters, but like afterwards, it was still kind of like that was weird. That was really weird. So when I started having like dreams and I started visualizing, I'm like, this is a new feeling. Like it was just like I'm now like getting these like psychological kind of responses from something that never happened at all. And it like to my brain, you know, it's the dreams that I'm having are just as vague or just as vivid as any other dream I have about something else that really happened to me. So I'm like, what's the difference? Like, you know, and I know a lot of people kind of get this when they play like D&D and stuff like that too. And like role-playing games and whatnot, and video games too. But, it was a profound one for me. It was like, okay, this is the first time I've really like fooled myself with this in a way that is like on a level that I don't fully understand. And it was kind of scary at the same time, but at the same time, it was just like kind of mind blowing. So I started writing. I got that line, "You were the night, you were the road," which is what one of the main lines in Black Sunrays. And I started writing the song from the perspective of that character that was like losing their mind. And if you like check out the lyrics, it's kind of like just that's kind of what it is. It's like that character, and just kind of like them realizing like they're with the, you know, what's kind of going on, and like that they're stuck in this infinite city and whatnot. And then at the end, it just becomes this vocal round where it's like, and Mary joins me on that, where it's just becomes these kind of three voices just kind of going around in this like vocal round where it's like, you were the night, you were the road, you were the night, you were the road. So it's kind of like mimicking this character's breakdown, essentially, is what it really is.
Right.
And then I took it to another level, because I was just like, well, I still have the Python script for all this stuff. Like, I could literally just bring that character up and like work on these lyrics and ask it, like, what do you think of this? You were there.
Right.
Like, you know, like have like it's like a custom kind of chat GPT bot that was there with me, you know, like that has like a kind of like access to the log. Like, what were you feeling when that was going on? So I kind of had this like a little bit of back and forth, but yeah, I ended up writing all the lyrics for it, and then kind of wrote the song quickly after that. But so anyway, the long story that I just said, like going from like the premise of the concept of like this wacky kind of just like very just heady, aloof kind of premise to something that became like, you know, that fooled me on some level of being like authentic. And it's like, okay, that's a new one. That's a new emotion, like something that's a bit indefinable that I really, really found interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, but everything on the record is written kind of from that perspective. I gave Alex Reed, who does a guest vocal on the tune or on the album, I gave him from Seeming. He's like one of my favorite vocalists and lyricists. I gave him like a very Cliff's Note version of the premise, like just probably a couple paragraphs of just kind of how like the kind of universe kind of works and doesn't work, and how there's like incongruencies in causality and stuff like that. And he just wrote like this really like image heavy, like noir kind of lyrics around like, what would it be like, you know, like if just like causal events weren't occurring correctly and whatnot. And it gives it a whole different, like, for me, like on the record, it kind of gives it a whole different perspective. It's like, okay, because everything else is kind of like still very like my stuff, and it's kind of like my perspective on it, but it's like, but this happened to everybody. So like his perspective that he brings to it is, it's like this very like realistic kind of like noir, like there's a lot of places and stuff like that are mentioned where I'm a lot more vague usually with my lyrics. But yeah, so that's kind of where that got. It was a long story to that, but it was just like one of the most like enriching and cool songwriting experiments I've ever done. Like, it was just like, wow, like that's. And like I said, I didn't just say like, hey, write me a song, ChatGPT. It was like this very like oddly collaborative thing that sits in this weird space between like talking to a human and not talking to a human, and getting the value of a lot of collaboration that I have had, but still knowing that it's not a real person. Yeah, it's just it was a weird one. And I know that like there's a lot of AI stories now, but that was kind of my main one that really was kind of like, okay, I can see the real like potential here, like for like how this technology can be used. So yeah, so that was pretty profound. So that's kind of what that song embodies. Yeah.
All right. So well, I mean,
any questions?
Yeah. I was taking notes. No, I wasn't actually, but you were right. This is high concept sci-fi stuff.
Yeah. It like, you know, especially with the relativity stuff, it's like, okay, it to figure it out, you'd have to know a little bit about like, you know, like space time and stuff like that, and how that kind of basically time dilation. If you can understand time dilation and like traveling at a high speed, it's like, and how that changes like relative time.
Mm-hmm.
If you just replace the time with that's just how chaotic the universe gets relative to you, then it's that's kind of what the concept is.
Gotcha.
And all of the implications that follow from that are just kind of the details really, and the fun of thinking about it. So
Mm-hmm.
so like I said, it's quite heavy, and it's one thing for me to explain it like this, but where it's going to be, I think, cool, at least when this stuff comes out, is there are going to be like out of context short stories like written that are kind of going to kind of guide people more to like understanding the concept, I guess.
Gotcha.
I got a lot of different plans for it, like for the art and for like these kind of short stories and different things people can read, and some audio narratives. Actually, kind of just doing like little like 3 radio plays, which are just kind of going to hire some voice actors. One of the benefits of working in the games industry, and kind of do these and sound design these kind of like just like radio plays of kind of just people in these situations, just to kind of give color, and then throw different things in there, little hints as to what, that might make it easier to understand the concept or places to go to figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's more of like a premise than a story, but the stories kind of become like how people interpret it, or how they interpret the songs. The songs themselves are kind of these little an anthology within it. But yeah, no, I'm really excited for it. It became something very different. Like I said, I was kind of detached from this album compared to my other albums. And that whole thing kind of made it a very different thing to me, and it gave me a very different interest in it. So I think I've brought a very different perspective to this record than my other ones. And yeah, I'm super proud of where it's gotten to, for sure.
You should be, from the sound of it.
That's
a ton of work. I mean,
it's a ton of work, and it's kind of funny. Like one of my friends was like, "Yeah, it would be you. You would be the one to like write lore about a whole universe."
Yeah.
Before you'd write a song. It's like, I'm like, and I had to do it out of necessity, because like I didn't know what to write. Like I was kind of having some like legit writer's block, like for a long time, or just not so much that, just not wanting to write about what my life was about. It was really kind of
fair enough.
And yeah, and world building is something I love doing. So it just kind of it was its own kind of fix, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so some of my friends have been like, yeah, that's you did it the long way.
Yeah. I mean, the Carl Sagan analogy, like if you want to make an apple pie from scratch, first invent the universe.
Yep.
So in this case, that is almost exactly what you did. Fascinating. I mean, a really high concept for a story and for a record. But yeah, I can understand that sort of criticism, maybe, of like, why don't you just make a record like the fucking everybody else?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like, and initially, like that, like before the concept was really taking off in my head, that was kind of like, I'm like, yeah, just make a record. Like there's some strong songs here. Like it'll come through well. And then while I was doing it too, like in kind of the bulk of the writing, there was a part of me that was kind of like, well, maybe not. Maybe I'll keep it from being a concept record, and I'll just use that as a stepping stone,
right?
And maybe tell people about it or something like that, but not make it kind of one of the main things. And also at the same time, like my whole thing with concept records too is like the album still has to be good. Like the songs still need to be good, like more than anything. I like, it's like I want to write a good record.
Right.
And if the people don't get the concept, or if they don't want to get the concept, at least they have a good record. And it's not necessary to understand it or interpret it in however way anyone wants to interpret it. But yeah, it was done the long way for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Fascinating. I'm just sort of stunned at the amount of like effort that you put into this, and I'm very intrigued by the concept. I mean, like I am a sci-fi fan myself, and earlier today I had recommended to you that you play through No Man's Sky, which I will double down on, based upon your description of like this whole thing that you've created and come up with, because it is a very personal experience that sort of deals with a lot of existential questions in very smart and thought-provoking ways. It seems like a thing that you would potentially enjoy, I think. But
Yeah, I've like
Yeah.
I've picked up No Man's Sky like twice.
Yeah.
And last time I picked it up, it stuck like
Oh,
on Steam Deck. Like yeah, on Steam Deck. But I haven't like explored the game itself. Like I've been
mhm.
just in like building like the I'm yeah, I've stuck myself like early, just in the early kind of mechanics of it. But I do intend to fully explore that game because I love what they've done with it over the years. Because I got it when it first came out, and I liked it when it first came out. I thought it was over. I thought people really gave it a way harder time than they needed to.
Mm,
And maybe it's just because I'm a developer too. But like,
sure.
um, but uh, but I was also kind of just like, well, I kind of explored it a little bit, and there wasn't really much to do. But I picked it up again, like yeah, not that long ago. So yeah, I fully intend to
Cool.
explore it more for sure, and I'll let you know where
Yeah, for
where
sure.
things go. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I get that's kind of the vibe of the game, right? Like it's your own thing, right? Like it's your own path that you do.
Yes.
Um,
And it
uh,
very much sort of it explores concepts of like, this is a our experience is, is all we have. It's a simulation, potentially, and it just resets, and we just, there's no rhyme or reason to it in a sense. Like it questions a lot of our perceptions about reality and that kind of a thing.
mhm.
It just seems up your alley, but um
That's yeah. I like questioning my reality.
yeah, yeah. Oh, me too.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the interesting thing about like your concept that you're describing, is that like we are living in an age where it feels like that, especially in a pandemic, a post-pandemic sort of a landscape where global communication is probably at an all-time high, um, and
Yeah.
you have
Communication with with quotes. It's like there's a lot of communication, but not a lot of or a lot of
yeah.
talking, not a lot of communication is like anyway, sorry, I cut you off
No,
there.
I totally get what you're driving at. It's a lot of
Yeah.
like we're interacting with other humans, but maybe not having the discourse that we should be.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like it feels that way certainly now. Where there's an interconnectivity and a globalism that has sort of pervaded so much of our daily reality, um, that it feels almost that way at times, right? Like you're
Mhm.
a voice on my podcast, on my Discord. So in essence, what you were saying, like you're still a nebulous concept. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
supposedly you're a person,
Yeah.
with a name like Réal. Sounds fake.
Yeah. The obvious fake person would name themselves real.
Yeah, obviously.
And you were speaking of AI earlier.
I figured you out, stupid. But it's a nebulous concept. Like maybe
Mhm.
you're, we are quickly approaching the point of being able to not know, right?
Yep.
Like there
Yep.
are, as it is, there are times where I'm like, responding to somebody on the internet, and I'm like, is that a real person? Maybe it
Yep.
isn't. I mean, like,
Yeah.
fucking, who knows? Like, the image of the person could be AI. What they say could be a bot. It fucking doesn't matter. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
so
one of the
go
yeah,
ahead.
no, yeah, it's exactly that's
Mhm.
that like I said earlier was kind of like the realization I made. It's like this isn't really that different than what's kind of happening and how things have been, and then when you kind of take that even to like more logical conclusions, it's like, is anyone real? And
Right.
it starts getting like gets into that existential stuff. And then yeah, another thing that like kind of happens with this concept too, I'll add to it too, this kind of a neat detail is
Mhm.
um when you travel out into this like liminal nether that's kind of like between these absolute positions that everyone has, you kind of create ripples, echoes of like kind of yourself,
Mhm.
the decisions that weren't made. It's kind of like, if everything's kind of branching constantly in this chaotic universe, there's like echoes of you kind of going through doing other things too, but you all have the same liminal 0 point. So there's this concept of mimics too, which is really when you really break it down, is really existentially terrifying. It's like every single other like version of you that could have ever existed is out there trying to get back, but they can't because they're stuck. Yeah, it's pretty creepy. And how they try to like how they try to like take you over. Yeah, it's a whole concept, a whole idea on the record too. But just wanted to add that one in there. Some cool kind of fun cosmic horror to add to it because why not?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
existence is cosmic horror.
It is. It is. It is.
I mean,
And anyone who thinks otherwise is
yeah, I got news for you.
a mimic.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I don't want to keep you too long. I could talk to you about this shit all night. So, like, we are already at an hour. I try to keep this to 40 to 60 minutes. I'm not chastising you. I was absolutely riveted, and I'm really, really glad that I got to talk to you. But I do want to go ahead and hit you with the last question that I always want to get to.
Yeah.
So, what is something that you're enjoying right now? And your answer can be anything, just something that you're fucking jazzed about as soon as you wake up.
That I'm jazzed about as soon as I wake up. Well, recently, like kind of to echo kind of like, the conversation we were having earlier today, like
Sure.
being in better health than I was
Yeah.
not that long ago, actually, has been huge, like just like life-changing too. I had to really take some time to get a lot of myself back, and I was dealing with some pretty nasty physical health issues and mental health challenges and stuff like that. And yeah, so having that back, that's a nice answer. And then also like I kind of told you earlier today, like I've been going through some like metal phases again, and yeah, I've just been really loving that, like just so like brutal, like Thal, like stuff, like Humanity's Last Breaths album. I think it's kind of probably my album of the year. Just like it's so unbelievably heavy and crazy what they do with guitars. It's not even metal to me anymore. It's like this whole other thing. It's like they're sound designing with guitars. Like it's just so crazy. Like it's just so like just inhuman and crazy, but also kind of groovy too at the same time. It's kind of like what I do with my stuff, or I try to do with my stuff, in that like it's complicated, but there's still something there that you can kind of grab onto.
Right.
So I like that. I've been really digging that kind of stuff over the last couple of years. But there's been a huge explosion of it this year. Metal's been nuts this year. There's been so much good, like all kinds of like for any person, there's probably some kind of metal that you would like this year. I would say, like literally, like from like really poppy stuff that like Spirit Box is doing to like poppy but still super heavy.
Right.
And then like Humanity's Last Breath and Tesseract. There's been so many cool sides of metal to come out this year. Yeah, so I've been digging that kind of stuff. And then games. There's been so many games too. Yeah. Baldur's Gate 3 has taken up a lot of my time. Armored Core 6 was incredible. I regret playing Final Fantasy 16. That might be a bit of a controversial one.
Oh, okay. I am ignorant, so I can't comment. But
yeah, it's just I mean, I was really excited about playing it because I actually really liked the demo, and I really love the combat system. Like I like intricate kind of combat RPG mechanics, like FromSoft stuff and whatnot. And I had like some cool like God of War meets kind of FromSoft kind of stuff, and then the game to me was just like it felt like 3 different teams made it, and they felt like kind of put it together, and like the story wasn't anything great, and there was no reason to explore. There was really no reason for RPG mechanics in the game, to be honest. It's like you kind of just got everything that you kind of just get everything, like, as soon as you beat what you like the boss, you get the next sword that you need. So there's like no like real like progression in it. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but cool. lot of games, and like getting the Steam Deck actually, when did I get like, I think January has been awesome. That's been great for just like playing older games that I never really got around to and stuff like that. So yeah, man, it's been like, being like grateful for like being in a healthier place, being able to like get back into doing music again, really, because I did take quite a bit of time away from it.
Sure.
Just being grateful for that. That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. And it's like it's a slow process of getting back to it for me, and I don't really have a complete like full set date on when like this album is going to be released, but it's going to be sooner than later for sure. Like I've been kind of going back and forth on a lot of ideas about like who and where to release it and stuff like that.
Sure.
And there still might be more to it with that, but it's going to be sooner. It's definitely going to be like a 2024, early 2024 type thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just to answer the question myself, as I always do, you did send me Humanity's Last Breath earlier, which was a band I'd never heard before, but you're absolutely right as far as like the metal sound design. There was a lot of it has a lot of production in it that you don't, or at least I've not normally heard in metal.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see why it would stand out to you, especially as somebody coming from that sort of audio background, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I even like heard like recently like an interview with Buster Odelholm, like the main person behind it, and he's kind of become this kind of go-to metal producer. But like, he said exactly what I suspected he does, like in the interview, like because like I said to me, it sounds like sound design, right? And he's like, yeah, he literally said that verbatim in an interview recently. He's like, it's like sound design to me. It's like it's more like I'm trying to make like an EDM track, you know, like I sample in the guitars, I tune them down, it's you know, it's designed right in a way to sound a very specific way, and it's so brutal and heavy and intense. Like it's just like it literally sounds like their name. That's what they sound like. It's just like, yep, that sounds like the freaking apocalypse, and like it's just so unrelenting and just unapologetic. I love it.
It was really good. It was really like interesting to hear. You know, it makes me glad that I, you know, asked you to send something over. But yeah, just to answer the question myself, yeah, absolutely, I'm with you on the being in better health. You know, after also having some health scares this year, this past weekend, I went to, you know, a goth night, and you know, it was at the place that my, you know, spine disc pinching my nerve symptoms had first occurred. Where, you know, I was there one night, and I'm like, why am I falling over? What the fuck is happening to me?
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, it's a scary thing to go through. So it was really nice to be there again and to just have that memory of like, that is where I was. It is not where I am now. And to sort of, you know, appreciate that. I'm very thankful to be in better health, and I'm taking a much greater focus on it. Because this is all we have.
It is. And like it kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's like it's the mortality reminders, you know, like, and yeah, you need to make them count when you get them, because it's really easy to forget sometimes, you know, how fleeting stuff is. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Musically, I've been enjoying a lot of Behemoth lately. They played Reno in September at like a small venue, and oh my god, they slayed. They fucking killed it. It was one of the best shows I've ever fucking seen, and it was just like and it was like $26 or a pittance, right? To see like this incredible band just like blow the roof off this fucking place. And
that's awesome.
It was really fucking great, and I love Behemoth. There's something about their like razor's edge kind of a sound that like just really appeals to like the young, angry 16-year-old in me that's like still very like, oh yeah, it's blasphemous and shit.
yeah, totally. Yeah, totally, man.
But the last part of this answer that I do want to give is that I've been really enjoying the Void Signal Discord server lately. It's filled with wonderful people. I've been playing Texas Chainsaw Massacre with like Quinn and Lucas, and like hanging out with like Jimenez and Bok Choy and like all these great people and great characters, and I'm so thankful to have, you know, a group of people who are willing to be held hostage to my thoughts whenever I feel like going in and unloading them. You know, that's a thing that you can't put a price on. Community, I guess, is what the underlying thing is that having community is good.
That's awesome that you've cultivated that. Like that's a really cool thing to have. Like I always tell myself every time I come on Discord that I need to be on Discord more, because like I can't stand being on social media very much anymore, and it's just sort of like, yeah, it's like where everyone's kind of talking, and even like as a game developer, like the fact that I haven't really used it as much as I have is kind of a bit shocking, but but yeah, like I don't know, expect to see me in there. I'll probably be in there every once in a while, just hanging out. Uh, yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's cool. It's cool to cultivate that sort of community and have that like it like just it means so much. Like just like setting up little things like that, like and you know, like having networks of people like that is it's
Yes.
just so important. It's just so important. Like again, kind of getting back to that kind of like with we were talking about with the concept thing, like the liminal, weird, distant nature of everything. It's kind of a little bit more real when you do it that way. And I kind of I kind of kick myself, you know, for never really taking, you know, making the effort to kind of set that up on my own. It's just kind of
Yeah.
just how I am, just kind of my own kind of neurodivergent ways. It's like my mind would just be like, well, why would I set something like that up? Like just
Right.
it's never occurred to me in my it's like it might be advantageous, you know, for your career. It's like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. It'll be like, oh, here's a fucking thing I should 100% do, and the reward would be tremendous. And it's
And there
like,
it goes.
oh,
Yeah.
fucking, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
busy having, off in whatever fucking place I'm at in my
Yes.
mind.
What's the exact opposite thing I could do? Okay, let's
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, right. I think I'd rather go sleep instead, or fucking whatever. Yeah. No, I feel you. Um, but yeah, thank you for saying that. I am very fortunate. Like, and I feel remiss because I'm not mentioning everybody on there who's wonderful, like HG and fucking, tons of other people that I'm like, Emily and all these other names. It's great to have a community of people that like you recognize, and especially
Mhm.
like people that I don't know, that want to be in your orbit. You know what I mean? Of like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
share some ideas about this thing. Let's have a
Y-
discourse.
Yeah. I mean, it makes that's all the difference, right? Is
Mhm.
it's like it's people that are, you know, their intention is to be there, right? Whereas,
Right.
you know, social media is just so passive and well, just everything, you know, like just like
Right.
being in any kind of environment with people like now it can get like that, like passive and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just the fact that everyone is at least putting in like their foot in the door, right? Like to actually be there. I think that's like that says a lot, right? Like it
Right.
means a lot. It means more than I think we as a society, like I think we took it for we've taken that for granted for a long time. And I think it's
Sure.
one of the big things about social media where it's like kind of a negative thing that's been on us. And now like, yeah, we're kind of getting these tribes back, you know, like
Yeah.
of that sort of, and it's awesome. Every time I dip my toes back into it, it's just like, this is the kind of conversation that I need to have more often.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's a fun little neo-tribalistic landscape that is shaking out. Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years with the rise of artificial intelligence and more open communication between people of various continents and colors and
Mhm.
creeds, and we
Yeah,
will see.
yeah. The AI stuff
Mhm.
is pretty wild. Like it's like I said earlier, like I kind of have different perspectives on it. Like, but I can see all sides. I can see the people that are really worried about it, and then I can you know, based on what I've been talking about tonight, there's like a lot of cool kind of applications of it. I think, but like
Mhm.
it's so crazy. It's where it's just like, can anyone speculate what it's going to be like even just a year? Like at this point, like with how fast that stuff has moved, like I don't think I can really trust anyone who thinks they know what's going to be happening in 2 years. Like
Right.
with that kind of stuff, just how far it came. Like I was saying, like I've said to a few of my friends, it was like, what was it, November 2021? We were like amazed by these amorphous blobs that were coming out when you type something in, like, you know,
Right.
into like Mid Journey or Night Cafe or something like that. It was like, look at it, it's making these blobs, you know.
Yeah.
And then it was like, look at the it's like it's yeah, it kind of looks like a cat. I typed cat to like, you know, the summer of 2022, where it was just like, it was already at the discussion of like artists are going to be out of jobs.
Right.
It's already looks photorealistic to like, well, they'll never be able to replace, you know, the directors, and it'll always need a human touch, and it'll always need like human direction. It's like, well, now they've tied GPT into Dolly, and it can actually like maintain context of characters between images and stuff like that,
Right.
and it can direct it all. It's just like it just seems like every time a new advancement in it happens, like it's like the things that people said were never going to happen, 6 months ago are already like, yeah, that's a non-issue. That's already happening. So so when people are like ask like, what do you think it's going to be like in 2 years, or like even for me, like, looking at like say like record contracts where it's like, some of them are 3 album deals, 5 album deals if you want to look at them and stuff like that, and it's like, what is an album even freaking gonna be like in 3 albums away, 10 years down the road or whatever? Like, what is that even going to be with how things are happening with this technology and how people are consuming music and stuff like that?
Right.
So yeah, so I just don't really like even have the faintest idea of like where this is going to go. But it's like, I don't know. It's kind of, yeah, there's a lot of like tech bro, like people going around, everyone sees it online. Same as it look, a lot of it looks the same as like the crypto stuff that happened, a couple years ago. But there is also like this undeniable like permeation of this stuff that's everywhere, and it did what crypto kind of didn't do, like not everyone's using crypto like they all said, but it's just like AI stuff, like, or at least generative AI, I should kind of separate, like, is in like pretty much everything like now, and it just is, and it's just part of it. Everything, a lot of stuff that everything or that people read now, it's like it's just generated. So it's kind of, it's crazy to think about how far this is going to go really quickly. I just don't think we really are ready, to be honest.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you 100%. Yeah. I don't think so.
Like psychologically, I don't think we fully are. Like I'll be like even just thinking back to like the experience that I had doing like writing that Black Sunray song, like if I can even think of probably different points in my life if I was in a different mental state, or if like, I don't know, maybe somebody did something like that and, we're dealing with, like schizophrenia, or like we're in a manic episode or something like that. Like how things like that could just be so disruptive too to like someone's psyche, like, or and like there, like I said, like there were several points along that process where I could have been like, this is a leaping off point where I could fully believe what this is, like, what this is, and like, or so the implications for that sort of stuff, of like how people are interacting with this kind of stuff, I think is pretty new territory. But they're already finding it's quite good for things like therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like because a lot of like CBT therapy is like, you talk to your therapist about it, but a lot of it's kind of like the work, like the workbook stuff, and like the, just going through the trees of like breaking your thoughts down and stuff like that. You can kind of do that with like, they found it's actually quite good for just people if they just need to like sort their thoughts out, to use generative AI stuff.
Right.
So I think it's gonna be really good in that respect, as long as it's like aligned well. But yeah, in terms of all the other stuff, like the generative like image stuff and the sound stuff, I could go on about this. The sound stuff is nuts too. Like like it's getting to this point now where like, I wonder if Spotify has been like all these years training, using all of this, like all these songs that people have been uploading to train how to generate music. And sure enough, like you see the stuff that like Google's making, like the LM music stuff, where it's just like, it's prompting music and it'll generate music infinitely, like to what you typed. And just like those, it's like, it's not impressive now, but like just like those amorphous blobs we were all being like wowed by 2 years ago, like this is going to ramp up like to like a level of quality that we're just not even going to be able to like fathom really soon. And it already is like getting insane. Like even in terms of like generating samples and stuff like that, and like making like drum sounds and stuff like that. There's already tools where you can just like type in like, I want it to sound punchy with like a clicky top end, but and it just spits them out. It's nuts. Like that, like that type of stuff. Like for me as a sound designer, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I can see how people could get quite concerned about their jobs, and but at the same time, I'm like, how do I use it? How do I use it as like a tool that's in here? But yeah, I'm sure I'm upsetting a lot of other people about the other sides of like the AI ethics and stuff like that too. But I'm also like, yeah, there's a lot of unethical things that are happening with AI in terms of like training it and all that kind of stuff too. So I'm aware of that. It's just the people who are
Sure.
throwing popcorn at me right now, but
yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's also a lot of other unethical shit happening in the world. So I mean,
Yeah,
we got to
yeah,
pick our
exactly.
flavor for the day, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and giving me your time and explaining this album and for sharing it. It was such a pleasure to be able to listen to it, and yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah, nope, yeah, for sure. And anytime you want me back to chat stuff, where I don't have like a full like science fiction concept to unload, then I'm game for coming back. I really enjoyed my time for sure.
Excellent, awesome. I will take you up on. Void Signal intro and outro music courtesy Processor. Visit processor2.bandcamp.com for more Processor, and visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more Void Signal. Thank you.